In a world full of fake AMG, M Sport and R-Design badges, the understated Mazda 3 MPS represents an antidote for petrol heads seeking big power whilst not showing off about it. The outside of the MPS remains consistent with its overall sleeper vibe. Some MPSs, just as this one, were upgraded to the Aero kit, which spices things up a little by lowering the rear suspension by 10mm and the front by 25mm. Furthermore, wing mirrors are smaller, and at the back we find an enlarged spoiler. All MPSs came with xenon headlights as standard, which provide excellent illumination for late night B-road hoons. The owner of this MPS has changed the wheels, which has had two main effects. Firstly, it means the MPS stands out a little bit more. Secondly, the upgraded 235 section tyres means an increase of roughly 10% more rubber. But we'll discuss this later in further detail. The interior space in the Mazda 3 MPS is really good. Lots of legroom and lots of headroom. And with these half leather sport seats, you can actually find a really good driving position which is conducive to sporty driving, i.e. you can sit nice and low. A further comment on these seats is that they're very supportive, but they're also very comfortable, so they represent a very good compromise. When it comes to options, Mazda wanted to make the purchasing experience very easy for its customers, so the Mazda 3 MPS came with quite a lot of equipment as standard. The only omission in this car is cruise control, and also an aux cable, which is ridiculous because all you have to do is plug in an aux on the back of the head unit, so why this didn't come from factory, I don't know. In terms of connectivity, it wasn't great from factory. All it comes with a 6-disc auto changer. This is the first generation, and I personally prefer it to the second generation. However, the Gen 2 did come with the option of sat-nav and Bluetooth. Overall quality is really good, as this is a Mazda product, although a few switches and a few panels do feel a little bit flimsy. The steering wheel is really good, it's leather wrapped and there's nice cutouts at the 10:2. We've also got functionality here for the stereo. Speaking of the stereo, all Mazda 3 MPSs came with a Bose sound system, and the bass is really strong. In fact, in Gen 2s, there's a subwoofer in the boot. Another plus of the Mazda 3 are the gauges. They're really clear, and the speedo goes up to 180. Another thing which I quite like is there's no center screen here distracting the driver's eyes. So instead, all of the information like your average fuel economy, average speed, your range, etc. all comes through here on this little center screen, which I quite like. It kind of partitions it off a little bit. This is just a Mazda 3 after all, so practicality is really good. We've got a good door bin here, we've got a reasonably sized centre cubby, we've got two generously sized cup holders in the centre, a little slot for a pen or some coins, got a little bit of storage underneath the HVAC, and we also have a really big glove box. Really big. Probably the biggest I've ever seen. And the glove box. Here in the back of the MPS, the rear half leather seats are just unbelievably comfortable, really nice. I was in here for probably about 4 hours yesterday, and it was really nice, really good, really comfortable, and there's lots of space. I'm sat behind myself there. I'm about 6'1", and I like the seat quite far back because I have fairly long legs, and I have probably about an inch of legroom, but you know, probably 4 inches of headroom. In terms of practicality, rear passengers benefit from a door bin, and there's also a very nice and very comfortable leather centre armrest. The boot is bigger than most rivals at 346 litres. This can of course be extended by folding down the 60-40 split rear seats, which collapse to almost flat. So here we are in the Mazda 3 MPS. So first of all, what are the specs? So this has got a 2.3 turbocharged engine with 256 brake horsepower and 380 newton meters of torque. This particular car has a fairly interesting history because before the current owner purchased it, it was off the road for 2 years, and that's because it's an ex-undercover police car. So what's the driving characteristics like? Well, first of all, let's speak about the ride. As we're in town currently, the ride is okay. It's fairly fidgety and it's fairly firm. We're about to now go over a speed bump at about 10 miles an hour, and it's okay. It's absolutely fine. The gearbox itself is quite nice. It's fairly notchy, but in this sort of car, that's absolutely to be expected. The clutch takes a bit of getting used to, especially when you take off from a standstill. I've just about got used to it now, but the first few times it was a bit chattery. We're now coming out of a town and we're in third at 2,000 revs. I'm going to put my foot down, and the torque is absolutely incredible. You have to really hold on because one of the known issues with the Mazda 3 MPS is its torque steer. I drove this car quite soon after the owner purchased it, and it had the standard 215s, and the torque steer was mental. The owner has subsequently upgraded the tyres to 235s, so theoretically there's about 10% extra surface area, and it's made all the difference. Due to its turbocharged nature, this car is dominated by its torque. 380 newton meters might not sound like too much in today's turbo diesel world, but wow, feels like more than 380, that's for sure. Now, although this car is a hatchback, and you might be fooled into thinking that it's quite a small and light car, it actually weighs 1480 kilos, which is a lot. It's about the same as an E46 330i, which is just unbelievable. The steering on these first gen cars, and maybe the second gen too, I've not looked into it, is not electric, it is hydraulic power steering. That means there's lots of feel. There's a bit of on-centre looseness, but it's fine really. I'd rather have the feel and a bit of looseness than an electric power steering with no feel at all. As this car is turbocharged, the red line is relatively low at 6,500, but the torque is consistent all the way up to there, so it's a fairly linear power curve. So we're on some fairly rough roads right now, and at lower speeds the ride is quite firm, but once you pick up speed, absolutely fun and it settles down. So we're in third right now at about 50 miles an hour, and we're doing 3,000 RPM. If you put down your foot, the torque is just remarkable. Torque steer is pretty apparent. The brakes are good and they're not over servoed, which is nice, just like the steering. So it has quite a mechanical raw feel. I guess that is a result of the fact that it is a 2007 car, so it's 11 years old. It's just effortless power. You can accelerate very, very, very nicely without having to exceed 5,000 revs. In this respect, it's kind of like a very talky diesel. There's not a huge amount of feel through the steering, but it's accurate, meaning you can place it very nicely. And the surge coming out of corners is really, really nice. And this is in fourth. Mazda claims about 6 to 6.1 seconds to 60. In fact, in the era, a few magazines like Autocar and Auto Express actually measured this on the Sprint about 5.9 seconds. I reckon that time would drop to about 5.5, 5.6 if this car had all-wheel drive. The mid-range is really good. It kind of dies a little bit after 6,000, but yeah, it's really good. When people are in the market for a used hot hatch, sadly the Mazda 3 MPS is somewhat overlooked, and this is a real shame because at what it does, it is very effective. In fact, when it came out in sort of 2004, 2005, there weren't any other hot hatches which could touch it. This in a straight line would absolutely obliterate a Golf GTI. The choice between a Gen 1 and a Gen 2 is personal, and also there's the money aspect. However, for any car, I would strongly suggest going for a model with low mileage.